From stories across the globe to stories here at home, this is the National News Broadcast. A very good evening to you. I'm Sharifa Tahir.
I'm Moin Hetiarachi, and here are today's headlines. The Mahasangha says the present president is an exemplary head of state. Presidential candidate of the New Democratic Front, Sajith Premadasa, pledges to consolidate national security and protect the democracy in a united Sri Lanka. All preparations underway to conduct the presidential polls. Pre-election violence at a minimum level at this year's presidential election. It is reported that an increase in Sri Lankans residing overseas arriving in the island to cast their vote has not been observed. The controversy surrounding the Sabarimala Kovil in India taken up before the Supreme Court.
We move on to those and other stories in detail now. The Mahasangha points out President Maithripala Sirisena is an exemplary leader who acts on far-sighted wisdom and is not shaken by the Atala Dharma. They expressed these views at a gathering held with the president last evening. The gathering was held at the Presidential Secretariat, representing the panel of experts preparing the application on entering the Tripitaka into the World Heritage List, the Tripitaka Conservation Board, the Buddhist Advisory Council, the Buddhist Intellectuals Board, the All-Island Shasana Rakshana Mandalaya were present at the gathering. The future progress of the programs implemented for the sustenance of the Sasana were discussed at the gathering. The president said, although governments change, policies and plans do not have to change. Such policies are prepared by experts. He pointed out that Tripitaka and the Buddhist philosophy does not change. Therefore, the policies and plans in this respect will also not change. The president believes this task may go forward uninterruptedly. He noted the blessings and exhortations of the Mahasangha and their proactive approach will carry forward the tasks implemented.
ගෞරවනීය මහා සංඝරත්නයේ ආශිර්වාද අනුශාසනා සහ මඟ පෙන්වීම වගේම මේ පිළිබඳව උන්වහන්සේලාගේ තිබෙන දැඩි උනන්දුවක් සහ කැපවීමක් තිබෙනවා මේ කාර්යය ඉෂ්ට කරන්න.
The president also gifted 10 million rupees to the All-Island Shasana Rakshana Mandalaya.
There is just around 35 hours of voting to commence in Sri Lanka's 8th presidential election. All preparations to hold the polls are being carried out expeditiously. Meanwhile, a large number of foreign election observers have arrived in the island to monitor the elections. Police officers deployed on special duties have been dispatched to their respective areas of duty. This time, 35 candidates submitted nominations to contest the presidential election. All schools will remain closed tomorrow as they will be deployed as polling booths and counting centres. The number of foreign election monitoring missions that have arrived in the island upon the invitation of the Election Commission is 18, out of which 11 teams will engage in direct election monitoring activities, whilst the other 7 teams will be studying the process under their observation. In addition, election observers from European Union and the Commonwealth, together with a number of local election observers, will be joining the monitoring process. Today, a group of the EU election observing team engaged in monitoring activities in Galle district. Police media spokesman SP Ruan Gunasekara says the silent period stretches from midnight yesterday till after a week since the announcement of the results of the presidential election. 3,821 complaints have been received from 8th October until yesterday. Within the past 24 hours, 92 complaints have been received, out of which 91 complaints pertain to the election law violations. Speaking at a media briefing held today, SP Ruan Gunasekara said 83 individuals have been arrested in connection with the complaints relating to election law violations since the presidential election was announced. Police media spokesman SP Ruan Gunasekara said previously during the silent period, house-to-house propaganda activities were permitted under conditions. However, this time house-to-house propaganda activities will not be allowed, as all election propaganda activities came to an end with effect from midnight yesterday. He further stated, the police are extremely alert to detect individuals violating the silent period. Violators will be videoed and identified. Suspicious individuals will be arrested and produced before court. He further stated a large number of police personnel have been dispatched to areas served by the minimum staff. On tomorrow morning, all activities pertaining to election duties on their part of police, including mobile patrols, will commence. He noted as of last morning, 111 complaints pertaining to violations of law were received. In addition to 105 complaints, 83 arrests have been made.
Election analysts observed pre-election violence in the run-up to the presidential election has been minimum this time. During the past 24 hours, complaints relating to election violence have not been received. Incidents of pre-election violence reported from the 8th of October until yesterday has been 27. In comparison with 2015 presidential election, reported incidents of election violence have been minimal. In 2015, the number of incidents of pre-election violence was 1,141. Chairman of the Elections Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, said not a single complaint has been received accusing anyone of damaging even a fingernail. He notes the only complaints that have been received related to reprimanding. He called to mind in 2015 the election campaign began with an individual who lit crackers being stabbed whilst arson attacks, shootings and murders took place. He noted in the midst of the district election commissioners and assistant election commissioners being tied down with their official duties, close to zero acts of violence have been reported. Executive Director of the PAFREL organization, Rohan Hettiarachchi, said, in comparison with the presidential elections of 2010 and 2015, this time a notable decrease in pre-election violence can be observed. He further stated, contrary to the murderers and gruesome acts of violence observed at previous elections, this election has been relatively peaceful.
In an attack carried out by an armed gang, Lasantha Vijayaratne, who served as a freelance journalist in Habaraduwa, Mipe area, was injured and has been hospitalized. The police states the attack occurred in the early hours of this morning. The reason for the assault is suspected to be a book authored by him and presented to a presidential candidate recently at a rally held in Ahangama. The book was titled Wasteful Development and Corruption. The police suspect have vandalized some of the items at his residence. Lasantha Vijayaratne functions as the secretary of the movement to combat state corruption. Meanwhile, the Election Violence Monitoring Center, issuing a statement, said this incident, in which journalist Lasantha Vijayaratne was threatened by at gunpoint and his properties were vandalized, challenges the free and fair atmosphere that prevailed in the presidential election campaign so far. The protest was held opposite the Colombo Fort railway station, condemning the attack on freelance journalist Lasantha Vijayaratne.
In the meantime, an international election observation mission with members representing South Africa, Maldives, Indonesia and India has arrived to the country to observe the 2019 presidential election. A media briefing of the election observation mission was held in Colombo today. The mission is led by Executive Director of Foundation for Human Rights in South Africa, Hanif Mohamed Wali. Speaking at the media briefing, the head of the mission said that the election monitoring will be carried out covering 8 districts in the country from Jaffna to Colombo. He further said that the observers of the mission will continue to engage in the monitoring activities from the voting process to the conclusion of the counting process. Meanwhile, he said that meetings were held with the local election observers, leaders of all political parties and all presidential candidates. He said that the final report of the observation mission will be submitted to the Election Commission on November 18th.
Like any observation group, we're here to see that the laws of the country, the constitution, the election laws are in fact respected. We're here to make sure that the complaint mechanisms which have been put into place are in fact effectively used and respected and observed. So we're going to be deployed around the country. We'll be all going off on our own with the assistance of the Electoral Commission, but we'll be acting independently, and we'll observe elections in these areas from the opening of the ballots to the counting of the ballots. And then we will return to compile our report on our observations and present it to the Electoral Commission. People are more and more sensitive about the issue of social media. However, at the same time, When you look at social media, you also don't want to interfere with freedom of expression. I'm hesitant to say freedom of the press. So, it's all these are factors that we will take into account and take into consideration. When we look at the impact of social media, especially if there's negative impacts on the elections, and it's something that concerns us with more and more. Social media has been being used in quite a negative way. And so it's something that we will, as far as possible, whilst we're in the field and whilst we're back at the home station here in Colombo, discuss amongst ourselves and make comments. We will present a report to the Commission before the 20th when we leave the country. Exactly when they will release it, I'm not too clear, but it's not going to be a secret. They've made it clear that they're very keen that it will be shared with the media. We don't think that there'll be any problems because the principles are all more or less the same. Well, that's precisely what we're going to observe. What is happening in this last phase? Now that we're in the country, we can actually, all the time we're talking to people, and we can also observe for ourselves and look at what the media says. So this is the phase that we'll be most acutely aware of. No, we don't have any opinions at this stage. It'd be unfair to say that we do have any opinions yet. And we appreciate your interest in the work that we're doing. And we hope we can serve the people and the democracy of Sri Lanka in a manner that you will find satisfactory.
Presidential candidate of the New Democratic Front, Sajith Premadasa, says upon ascending to the presidency after the 16th, no room will be left for any form of revenge or animosities. He emphasizes he will dedicate himself to create a new democratic culture. In this respect, the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country will be preserved. Sajith Premadasa pledged to create a motherland in which all races and religions are protected, whilst giving pride of place to Buddhism.
එකරමුණකින් මේ මිහිතලයේ රටම එකට එක්වනාද දිනයේ සිව්සිය දහසින් හදවත් බැඳුනා.
Presidential candidate Sajith Premadasa expressed his views addressing the final rally of the New Democratic Front held at Marudana last night.
මිනිසත්කම වපුරා දූවිලි පොළොවෙත් ජීවය පතුරා මිනිසත් පවුරක් සබැඳි රට රැකුණා එක්ව ඉදිරියට යන මග හැදුනා එක්ව ඉදිරියට යන මග හැදුනා හරින් හර හිතින් හිත මුළුණ
Presidential candidate of the New Democratic Front, Sajith Premadasa, said he will create a humane era and will destroy terrorism, drug smuggling and murder. He emphasized in the government that comes into force on the 17th, there will be no room for racism and religious extremism. He reiterated on his pledge to implement the Jana Sabya movement alongside the Samurdhi movement to grant concessions to the poor and needy. He further stated 2 sets of school uniforms, a pair of shoes and a midday meal will be provided for students. He also pledged on the implementation of technical colleges in industrial towns. He said the era in which luxurious comforts were enjoyed in politics will come to an end, and instead an era in which the general masses enjoyed comfort will be brought about. He concluded no matter who exaggerates, on the 17th of this month, the Swan will emerge victorious. He added, however, upon victory, there will be no room for political vengeance as a new political culture is to take shape.
Presidential candidate of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Gotabaya Rajapaksa promises to implement all points given in his manifesto during his tenure. He made these comments joining the final rally held yesterday. The rally was held in Homagama town. All the rallies organised on behalf of the presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa were titled A Successful Vision, A Productive Country. Presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa requested everyone to join him to face the challenges to build the country. He says he has put forward a prosperous vision to build the country. He promised to create clean, qualitative and efficient public service. He says the local farmer, the estate cultivator and the local industrialist will be protected. He says the plantation sector has collapsed. He added, tea, coconut, rubber and exports crops such as pepper have collapsed. He further stated that in the past, large revenue was earned from the cultivation of pepper in the number of districts. However, to facilitate a few small-scale businessmen, a substandard pepper was imported for re-exportation, resulting in the price of locally grown pepper plummeting. He also stated the tea industry from small-scale tea growers to large companies has collapsed. He intends to focus on special attention on the plantation sector. He explained his party has introduced a simple tax system whilst the VAT will be reduced to 8%. He pledges to guarantee university education for all who pass their advanced level examinations. He promised to implement all these points given in his manifesto during his tenure.
Presidential candidate of the National People's Power JVP parliamentarian Anurakumara Dissanayake says his political force will never fear an anti-democratic dictatorship of nepotism. He states the force he represents will fearlessly come forward to defeat such elements. MP Dissanayake expressed his views joining in the final rally of the National People's Power held at Maharagama yesterday. Presidential candidate of the National People's Power Anurakumara Dissanayake questioned as to whether the people need to return to power those they defeated previously. He noted there was a time when the entire country was ruled by one family, and it was Gotabaya Rajapaksa who facilitated that family with all the tools to run the country in whichever way they pleased. MP Dissanayake noted no one was allowed to speak against that government. He pointed out when journalist Lasantha Wickrematunge made the first revelation of the MiG aircraft deal in the Sunday Leader, he was murdered. Journalists such as Poddala Jayantha, Kate Noya, Upali Thenakone and Namal Pereira were harassed. He further stated his party did not retreat in fear back then and assured the public that they will not go into hiding in fear. He added the most formidable people's power has been created and can challenge any anti-democratic dictatorship.
Here are the views expressed by a number of presidential candidates. Presidential candidate of the National People's Movement, Mahesh Senanayake, said the journey they have commenced is the first step to challenge the political culture of the country, and it is a process that will be implemented within the democratic framework of the country. He further stated, even after the presidential election, they will progress along with this objective for all ethnicities in the country to join together and to go forward with a sense of togetherness, leaving no room for ethnic conflict. His objective is to bestow with the people peace, freedom, development and the pride of being a Sri Lankan. He noted all citizens should be governed by one law. He pointed out one word that stands out in the run-up to the presidential election, and that word is national security. He noted all candidates speaks of a physical personal security. However, in the topic of national security, there are much more points that are covered. He explains when reconciliation, the education system, the economy, the health sector and the food security and the environment is all taken together, it forms the basis for national security. He described himself as the candidate who has the most knowledge when it comes to national security and assured the public can place their trust in him when it comes to the topic of national security. He detailed his group has a specialized knowledge when it comes to national security. He also pledged to give leadership to all steps to be taken to rid the country of the drug menace.
ජාතික ආරක්ෂාව ගැන කතා කිරීම සඳහා දැනුමක් තිබෙන නිසා පැහැදිලිව මේ රටේ ජනතාවට විශ්වාසය තියාගන්නට පුළුවන්. මෙම කණ්ඩායම ඇතුළු මේ සියලුම නායකයින් මාවට රොප්පී සිටින නිසා පැහැදිලිවම ජාතික ආරක්ෂාවේ ගැන විශේෂඥ දැනුමක් අපට තිබෙනවා. පැහැදිලිවම මා ජනාධිපතිවරයා වශයෙන් මේ රටේ මද්ද්‍රව්‍ය මේ රටින් තුරන් කිරීම සඳහා ගත හැකි සෑම ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් ගන්නා බවත් ඒ සඳහා නායකත්වය දෙන බවත් පැහැදිලිවම මම මේ රටේ ජනතාවට ප්‍රකාශ කරන සිටිනවා.
Presidential candidate of the Janasatha Peramuna, Venerable Bathramulle Seelaratana Thera, said the Janasatha Peramuna is a party that never acted in a biased manner. The Thera noted he grew up in Kaduwala electorate. However, all those who entered parliament through the wards of the electorate did not serve the area. The Thera observed those who scrapped the culture and history from the schools are none other than those who entered parliament through the valuable votes of their supporters.
තමුන්නාන්සේලාගේ ඡන්දෙන් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ගිය සියලුම දෙනා කඩුවල ආසනයේට කිසි කෙනෙක් වැඩ කරේ නැහැ. අද සංස්කෘතිය ඉතිහාසය පාසල් වලින් අයින් කරේ කවුද? තමුන්නාන්සේලාගේ වටිනා ඡන්දෙන් ගිය මේ දේශපාලඥයෝ කියන කමත කරන්න එපා. අපි මේ ඉතිහාසය සංස්කෘතිය ආරක්ෂා කරන්නයි අපි ඉදිරියට ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ.
Presidential candidate of the United Socialist Party, Siritunga Jayasuriya, said his party has said over and over again that the system of capitalism cannot be cleaned and rebuilt. He proposes to abolish capitalism and reintroduce a strengthened economy under socialist framework. It is for this purpose he has come forward to contest the presidential election. He further stated it is the United Socialist Party that fights for the building of society of good citizens by solving unemployment, alleviating poverty, addressing the issues of agricultural sector and issues pertaining to lands and drinking water, whilst addressing concerns such as fertilizer through the system of cooperatives.
ලැබෙන ක්‍රමයක් සකස් කළා මේ රට ආර්ථික වශයෙන් ගොඩනගලා විරකියාව නැති කරලා සෑම කෙනෙකුටම යහපත් පුරවැසියන් වශයෙන් ජීවත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් සමාජයක් ගොඩනැගීම වෙනුවෙන් සටන් කරන්නේ එක්සත් සමාජවාදී පක්ෂය පමණයි.
අපි හැමෝම 17 වෙනිදා
Presidential candidate of the Frontline Socialist Party, Duminda Nagamua, observed after 17th of November, every individual will have to go back to their regular lifestyle that has been destined to them. This is a bitter truth that nobody wants to hear. He further stated his message involves taking the bitter truth to the midst of society. He added, the task of this party is to teach society the lessons of being an example to defeat this bitter truth.
A meeting between Chairman of the Elections Commission Mahinda Deshapriya and the presidential candidates and their official representatives took place at the Elections Secretariat in Rajagiriya today. Subsequent to the meeting, the official representatives of the presidential candidates expressed their views to the media. On behalf of the New Democratic Front, Minister Ajit P. Pereira said it should be noted the government, without misusing its powers, has paved the way for this election to proceed in a decent manner. He also pointed out on previous occasions complaints were always levelled against the government and the candidate fielded by the government. However, this time all the complaints received today were lodged against the candidate of the opposition. He observed at the juncture the people of the country should realise the change. They should also realise as to what will happen if those who do not respect the rule of law come to power. Commenting on the much-spoken social media prohibition, he said absolutely no steps have been taken to restrict social media platforms. A national organizer of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Basil Rajapaksa, said, no, the law cannot be violated and nothing about politics can be spoken. He also said it was decided to add 3 queues at 5 polling booths as the number of electors is high. Therefore, instead of 2 representatives, we have taken steps to deploy 3 representatives. Presidential candidate Venerable Bathramulle Seelaratana Thera said there was much discussion about the burqa. He was thankful to the proposal to unveil the face before voting at least for a few seconds and then cast the vote. He alleged sometimes males can also disguise themselves as females and come to vote.
Statistics from the Department of Immigration and Immigration reveal that there is no truth in information circulating that Sri Lankans residing overseas are arriving in the country in large numbers to vote at the presidential election. Statistics show a large increase in the migrants and Sri Lankans arriving in the island for special purposes is not indicated. Statistics of the Department of Immigration and Immigration reveal from the 1st to the 11th of November 2019, the number of dual citizens returning to Sri Lanka has been 809. In corresponding period of previous year, the arrivals were 723. The number of Sri Lankan citizens arriving in Sri Lanka from the 1st to the 11th of November in 2019 was 39,553. In the corresponding period of the previous year, the figure was 38,325. The details were extracted from the statistics maintained by the Department of Immigration and Immigration.
Welcome back, and we continue with more stories here at home. Financial grants were presented to 69 families having twins by President Maithripala Sirisena at the Presidential Secretariat today. Financial grants of 1 million, 2 million and 2.5 million rupees were granted to 69 families having twins, triplets and quintuplets respectively. A program is underway upon the guidance of the President to grant financial assistance to families that are facing financial difficulties in bringing up twins or more than one child in one birth. The program is conducted under the Presidential Secretariat.
රටේ දරුවන් තමයි අපේ අනාගතය බවට පත්වන්නේ. එකී දරුවන් රැක ගැනීම අප කාගේම යුතුයකම තමයි තීරණය කරනු ලබන්නේ.
A special trust fund commenced on behalf of children to coincide with World Children's Day, and a lottery named Diri Daru Sampatha was introduced today. Required equipment for 12 hospitals in remote areas were distributed, financed by the Presidential Fund. A program by the title Seva Prasadini was held at the President's house today under the patronage of the President to pay tribute to his staff. In addition, a souvenir was presented to the President as a tribute to his services over the past 5 years. The souvenir was presented to the President by Presidential Secretary Udaya R. Senaviratna. In the meantime, Director General of Government Information, Nalaka Kalueva, says special measures have been implemented to expeditiously issue the results of the presidential election to the media. Speaking at a media briefing held at the Department of Government Information, Director General Nalaka Kalueva said over the past month, as the Department of Government Information, they designed a software to disseminate elections results. Thereby, upon receipt of official election results, they will be emailed to all media institutions in PDF format. He further stated results will not be emailed to individuals but only to institutions. He added, for the first time, steps have been taken to disseminate election results live on YouTube and Facebook. In the meantime, the Sri Lanka Transport Board says 1,400 buses have been deployed for the duties to be carried out by the Elections Commission and the Sri Lanka Police. In addition, special bus services are operational from Colombo Fort on long-distance routes. The Sri Lanka Transport Board states from today 150 buses have been added in addition to the long-distance buses that operate from Colombo Fort daily. These additional buses have been provided by 12 regional offices of the CTB. The buses will be deployed to transport ballot boxes and to facilitate transport for officials on election duty. The Sri Lanka Transport Board states all the buses have been provided upon a payment. Meanwhile, special train services will be operational from tomorrow for the convenience of voters heading towards their hometowns to cast their votes. A special train will leave the Colombo Fort railway station bound for Badulla at 7:35 a.m. tomorrow. A special train will also leave Badulla bound for Colombo at 8 p.m. In addition, the Department of Railways states, depending on the requirements, steps will be taken to extend the destinations of the current routes.
Veteran athletic coach Yogananda Vijayasundara has passed away. The late Yogananda Vijayasundara was a product of Ahaliagoda Central College in the 60s. He emerged as a skilled volleyball player and an athlete and thereafter dedicated himself to athletics. He was the national champion of the 110-meter hurdles during his time and has gifted the country with a number of therapists who have excelled in national and international level. Yogananda Vijayasundara, who was terminally ill over a period of time, was 75 of age at the time of his demise. The final rites will be taken place on Sunday the 17th at the General Cemetery in Pilimantalava at 5 p.m. His mortal remains lie hid at his residence in Pilimantalava. That's it for tonight's English news broadcast. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Good night.